No intro, no small talk, just straight to the point. I'm Nim without the E, and here's my review of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex Chapter 31. But before that, help me push this video to 100 likes or 1K hype points. And once again, thank you so much, guys. So yeah, Chapter 31 is titled Shut Up, and Eida is on the cover. And of course, Chapter 31 truly represents Eida as the main topic in this chapter. The scene in Chapter 31 begins by showing a tense situation where Enojin, who is in control of Kobu's body, is surrounded by 6 Mamushi. In this situation, Enojin, who is still unsure about Kashin Koji's decision to kill Kobu, is still debating ethics and such. But considering that Kobu is a civilian, it is difficult for Enojin to release his jutsu. Because in this situation, Enojin cannot hold back or even release his jutsu because it would be fatal if Kobu died. So at this point, Enojin's final decision is to try to avoid the Mamushi's attack. In other words, if he cannot protect Kobu or anyone else in this situation, Enojin declares that he does not deserve to be called a shinobi. But on the other hand, Eida, who is the main point or main character in this operation, shows a truly anxious expression. Especially after Enojin decides to cut off communication between the shinobi, Eida cannot get any updates or the latest information from Enojin. But of course, Damon knows that Eida still has another alternative by using Senrigan. But according to Eida, that would be a big problem and could trigger the worst possible outcome. Because no matter what, every time Eida uses her Senrigan eyes, Mamushi can see Eida at the same time. And actually, that is what Eida herself fears. Because once again, it's not just that Mamushi can see Eida when she uses her eye ability. Rather, it will reveal Eida's location, making it easy for Mamushi to find her. And that is at least one of Mamushi's special abilities besides splitting his body. On the other hand, Sarada and Delta, who had been monitoring the movements of the Mamushis that had spread out in large numbers throughout Konoha village, saw a foolish act by the Mamushis. In short, after they scattered to search for Eida, one of the Mamushis was unsure if Eida was in the village. But the problem was one of the Mamushis seemed impatient and provoked the other Mamushis. As a result, one of the Mamushis was beaten up, and they were seen fighting each other like fools. And once again, this foolishness was triggered by the large number of Mamushis that had split their bodies, which reduced their intelligence. Elsewhere, especially after Sai suspected that his son was involved in this scenario, he got straight to the point with Shikamaru about his son. Was Enojin safe? But instead of answering that question, Shikamaru immediately explained the essence of all this. Shikamaru explained that the Mamushi, as divine tree people, were not targeting Konoha but Eida. Hearing this, Sai's response was naturally to ask where this information came from. But as usual, Shikamaru couldn't say more about it. He didn't have time to explain everything in this situation. But at least, one sentence from Shikamaru made Sai think more openly. In short, Shikamaru understood his concern for Enojin. But as shinobi and, more importantly, as parents, in an emergency situation like this, the top priority should be the safety of the village and all its citizens. And of course, upon hearing this, Sai, who had initially tried to intervene, ended up offering his support to Shikamaru. Specifically, Sai would do whatever he needed. The chaotic situation in Konoha continued as the Mamushi fought each other, causing the villagers to panic and run. There was a moment when a frightened villager fell while running. At the same time, the Mamushi seemed to want to kill him. But thanks to Sarada, the Mamushi that was about to kill the villager ended up floating in the air, their bodies sucked into a sphere created by Sarada using her Ohirume ability. And yes, it didn't take long for every Mamushi at the location to be sucked into a single point of the sphere. But it seems that at this point, we get confirmation of the weakness of this ability. In short, Ohirume's ability only works on objects she can directly see with her own eyes. Therefore, its weakness is that the ability will not function on anything outside her line of sight. And, of course, seeing that some of the Mamushi managed to escape, Delta took over the situation. And yep, easily and brutally, Delta finished off the Mamushi instantly. Oh yeah. Continuing after Sarada manipulated the Mamushi's gravity and pulled them into a sphere, Sarada did the same thing to the Mamushi by exploding their bodies without leaving a single trace. But in this case, Sarada was as usual. Her head hurt, and the worst part was that Sarada lost her sight. Her gaze became blurry, and it was truly like being blind. Because once again, Sarada used that ability for a fairly short time, and that's at least the worst case scenario for Sharingan users in general if they overuse that eye ability. Meanwhile, at another location, Enojin was still struggling to avoid every attack using his stiff body, but at least he managed to survive. But unfortunately, Enojin was really stubborn and didn't even let himself release the technique from Kobu's body control. However, the plot twist was that Kashin Koji was able to forcibly release Enojin's jutsu. Perhaps more accurately, Koji was able to release the mind transfer jutsu with just a snap of his fingers like a magician. And yes, I was really surprised. However, after Koji forcibly released Enojin's jutsu, Enojin reconnected the Shindenjin technique so they could connect with each other again. And after Enojin reactivated the mind transmission formation, the first thing he did was inform Kobu, who was in danger on the roof of the Hokage's office, of his position and condition. And as you can see, the Mamushi were really easily provoked. And at this point, they did something crazy to Kobu. They burned him alive. But not long after that, Sai and Shikamaru, who had previously received information that Kobu was in danger, immediately came to help. Unfortunately, Boruto arrived before them and instantly saved Kobu by slashing all the Mamushi there and absorbing them using his karma seal. And once again, thanks to Boruto, Kobu ended up being saved. But I know, maybe this will still be the part that keeps you angry at Kobu. Why? After Kobu was saved by Boruto and witnessed everything with his own eyes, especially when Shikamaru explained the threat attacking Konoha, Shikamaru asked Kobu to let him finish the job first. However, as I mentioned earlier, Kobu is extremely stubborn and chose to ignore the facts he had just seen. I mean, he still wanted to continue his interrogation of Shikamaru, particularly regarding several truths about Boruto and other matters that Shikamaru has kept hidden so far. But of course, once everything comes to light, the Land of Fire will not hesitate to take action, even if it means making a serious decision, whether that's removing Shikamaru from his position as Hokage or something similar. At the very least, that's what may happen moving forward. Still, at this point, Shikamaru's situation is far from over. On the other hand, considering that the plan to kill Kobu failed and Boruto came to save Kobu, Boruto himself seems confused. Perhaps it's more accurate to say he's unsure whether this was a coincidence? Or did Koji even know that Boruto would come to the rescue? Because, as we know, Koji has the ability to see probabilities that will occur in the future. This means that every action he has planned, such as the rescue or even the failure to kill Kobu, he has already seen before it happened. But seeing Koji's own response, it seems that Koji's answer, based on his personal opinion that Kobu must die, does not fully answer Boruto's question. In other words, Koji himself seems unable to predict or even see it with certainty. Because if you look at recent events, there are so many things happening that are beyond Koji's own predictions. A simple example is the movement of the Mamushi, which was supposed to occur several weeks after Koji's prediction, but actually happened earlier than he anticipated. And all of that is because the future or destiny has changed so quickly. Continuing the operation on this mission, everything has returned to normal. Each team is trying to reduce and defeat every Mamushi, which, according to Enojin, has reached a number of 200. However, considering that their numbers continue to grow, the Konoha shinobi can only fight with their existing resources and limited energy. After all, everything they fight against has the same strength and abilities without any reduction, and it is truly like a real body. So indirectly, fighting enemies whose numbers continue to grow with strength and endurance that does not diminish even slightly, even if they split their bodies, will overwhelm the Konoha shinobi. Finally, considering the endless situation and conditions, Shikamaru used a last resort to end this invasion. In short, remembering that Mamushi's goal was to find Eida, Shikamaru decided to help Mamushi lead him to Eida's location. In other words, Shikamaru wanted to use Eida as bait. So, in other words, it will automatically lure all the Mamushi and gather them in one area. And considering that at this point they have become stupid, at least that is the most ideal way to take advantage of the current situation and conditions. And of course, after they are all lured in, Konoha will focus all its strength to destroy them all at once in a single attack. And yep, Chapter 31 ends with Eida's panicked expression, but Damon shows an enthusiastic or excited expression because this is a much simpler and more effective method. Whether this will be the climax of the battle against Mamushi, or even an unexpected plot twist in the future, let's wait and see on the 18th of next month. If you enjoyed this video, please help me push it to 100 likes and 1K hype points. I'm Nim without the E. See you in the next video. Bye bye, Data Bio.